Mina walked the same path to school every morning, an old, cracked sidewalk lined with dusty trees and flickering street lights. She carried a faded backpack that had lost its color years ago, its straps repaired with her own small stitches. To anyone watching, she looked like an ordinary girl, maybe a bit shy, maybe a bit quiet. But if someone looked closer, really looked, they would see the weight she carried. A weight far heavier than her bag. She reached the school gate, just as the bell rang. Students rushed past her in groups, laughing, teasing, sharing videos on their phones, exchanging stories about homework and weekend plans. They weren't bad kids. They were just busy with their own worlds, their own friends, their own problems. Mina didn't blame them. She had mastered the art of slipping through hallways, unnoticed, like a shadow blending into the edges of the building. In class, she sat in the second to last row, her favorite place because it gave her the perfect balance between visibility and invisibility. Teachers could see her enough to mark her present, but not enough to ask questions she didn't have the energy to answer. When the math teacher asked the class to pair up, Mina pretended to look for someone, though she already knew how it would go. Groups formed instantly. Confident students paired with confident ones. Friends paired with friends. And Mina quietly moved her desk next to an empty one and began working alone. Her stomach growled softly, a sound she prayed no one heard. Her breakfast had been a single biscuit, one she found in the kitchen while her mother slept after another long night shift. It was enough to keep her going, but not enough to keep her strong. She placed a hand over her stomach and focused on the numbers in her notebook. When lunchtime came, Mina walked outside to her usual spot behind the library. It was a quiet corner where students rarely passed by. She sat on the grass and unpacked her lunch, a small bread roll and a half-filled bottle of water. She nibbled slowly, trying to make it last longer. She watched other students in the distance, gathered at tables, trading snacks, laughing loudly. For a moment, she wished she could be part of that world, a world where food was shared, not rationed, where problems were discussed, not hidden. But Mina had learned long ago that wishing didn't change reality. She thought of her mother, who worked 2 jobs but still struggled to pay bills. Mina never complained. She knew every coin mattered. She knew her mother skipped meals too. Sometimes they joked that hunger was just the visitor in their house. But the truth was far from funny. After lunch, Mina returned to class. Her head felt light, her hands weak. She rested her chin in her palms, trying to focus. Whenever a teacher lectured, the words floated around her like distant echoes. She wanted to ask questions. She wanted to participate. But her mind felt too tired. Her body too drained. During group activities, students didn't ignore her out of cruelty, they just never thought she needed someone. She was quiet, yes. But she always seemed to manage. She turned assignments in on time, she never caused trouble, and she never asked for help. Most people assumed she was doing fine. That was the problem. People often mistake silence for strength. And independence for stability. When school ended that day, Mina packed her bags slowly. Students rushed past her, excited to leave, to meet friends. To go home to warm meals and welcoming voices. Mina walked out alone, heading toward that same cracked sidewalk lined with tired trees. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the road. Mina's steps grew slower. Her vision blurred slightly, and her breath felt shallow. She pressed her hand to her forehead. She told herself she was fine, just tired, just hungry, just overwhelmed. Tomorrow would be better. But deep down, she knew something inside her was giving up bit by bit. She paused near the gate and leaned against the wall. The cool surface steadying her. Students passed by without noticing. They were laughing, rushing, moving forward. And Mina stood there, unseen. She wasn't angry, she wasn't sad. She had simply grown used to being invisible. What she didn't know was that the next morning, everything would change. Someone would finally see her, not her silence, not her distance, but her struggle. And that single moment of recognition, that single act of kindness, would save her in ways she could never imagine. The morning sun stretched weakly across the sky, its pale light touching the school building as students rushed through the gates. Laughter echoed. Backpacks swung from shoulders. And groups of friends chatted about homework, gossip, and weekend plans. Plans? In the middle of this noisy river of life walked Mina slowly, quietly, almost like she was drifting rather than moving with purpose. Her steps were unsteady today. She hadn't eaten since the previous afternoon, and even then it was just a cup of tea and a piece of bread she had saved for herself after ensuring her mother had eaten before leaving for her night shift. Mina's head throbbed lightly, but she kept walking. She didn't want to draw attention. She never did. As she neared the school gate, she felt her vision blur. The ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. The chatter around her felt distant, like she was underwater. She tried to steady herself by placing a hand on the wall, but her fingers were trembling too much to hold on. She blinked rapidly, hoping the dizziness would pass. It didn't. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed gently to the ground, landing on her side near the big tree beside the gate. Her backpack slipped off her shoulder, spilling a few worn-out books onto the dirt. She didn't faint completely, but her body refused to move. She curled slightly, clutching her stomach half from hunger, half from fear. Students kept walking. Some glanced at her, confused for a moment, but their eyes quickly shifted away. Maybe she's just tired. One girl whispered to her friend. She probably just tripped. Another shrugged. No need to get involved. Someone muttered as they stepped around her. It wasn't cruelty, it was indifference. The kind that comes from always being in a hurry. Always assuming someone else will help. Mina heard the footsteps, the murmurs, the passing comments. Her chest tightened with embarrassment. She wanted to sit up, to pretend she was fine, to avoid becoming an inconvenience. But she couldn't even move her arms properly. Her throat was dry, and her breaths came unevenly. Just then, a pair of shoes stopped right in front of her. Mina. Are you okay? It was Sara. A girl her age, someone she didn't really talk to. They'd shared a few classes, exchanged polite smiles, but nothing more. Sara wasn't the popular girl, but she wasn't invisible either. She was simply someone who noticed things, small details, others ignored. Right now, she was noticing Mina. Mina tried to speak, but no sound came out. Her lips trembled. Sara immediately crouched down, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. You don't look okay. Hey, can you hear me? She asked gently. Mina nodded weakly. Sara didn't hesitate. She placed a hand on Mina's shoulder, steady but soft. You're shaking, she whispered. I'm going to get help. Or, no. No, I'll help you myself first. She slid her arm under Mina's back, helping her sit up slowly. Mina winced as the sudden movement made her head spin again. Easy. Easy. Sara murmured. A few students glanced back now that Sara had stopped, but still none stepped forward. They watched like it was a minor scene, not realizing it was a crucial moment in someone's life. Sara looked up at them sharply. Can someone please bring water? Or call the school nurse? She called out. Silence. A few students exchanged glances, uncomfortable. Sara sighed. Fine. I'll do it myself. She took Mina's scattered books and put them gently back into the torn backpack. Then she helped Mina stand, supporting most of her weight. It wasn't easy. Mina was light, but Sara wasn't very strong. Still, she refused to let go. Lean on me. Okay. Sara said. Mina nodded again, eyes filling with tears not just from weakness but from the shock of someone actually caring. Step by step, Sara guided her toward the clinic. Mina felt her body sway, but Sara kept her steady, whispering softly. It's okay. Almost there. I've got you. When they finally reached the small room beside the administrative office, Sara gently lowered her onto the bed. The nurse rushed over, startled, and began checking her vitals. Hunger and exhaustion. The nurse concluded after a few minutes. She needs food, rest, and care. Sara didn't even wait for permission. She ran to the canteen, bought a sandwich and a juice box with the little money she had, and hurried back. Mina's hands trembled as she accepted the food. "Thank you," she whispered, the words fragile but sincere. Sara smiled softly. "Don't thank me. I just did what anyone should have done." But the truth was no one else did. And that made all the difference. Sara guided Mina gently toward the school clinic, her arm wrapped around the trembling girl's shoulders. Mina tried to protest, the kind of weak, embarrassed protest someone gives when they're not used to being cared for. But Sara didn't allow her to walk alone. Her instincts told her that this wasn't something to ignore. Mina's steps were unsteady, and every few seconds, she blinked as if fighting dizziness. Inside the clinic, the school nurse looked up in surprise. "What happened?" I think she fainted," Sara said, breathing fast. She was lying outside the gate. Nobody stopped. I couldn't just leave her there. The nurse quickly helped Mina onto a small bed and took her vitals. Her blood pressure was low. Her heartbeat was weak. She brought her water and spoke softly to her. "You need to drink this slowly." "When did you last eat?" At that question, Mina froze. Her fingers tightened around the cup, and her eyes lowered to the floor. She didn't answer. Sara watched her silently. Until this moment, Mina had always seemed like just the quiet girl in class, the one who sat by the window, completed every assignment, and never caused trouble. Sara realized she had never actually spoken to her. Not beyond the occasional "Excuse me," or "Thank you." But now, sitting here, watching her struggle to speak about something as basic as food, Sara felt a heavy weight of guilt. After a long pause, Mina whispered, "Last night. Just tea. I didn't have anything for breakfast." And Sara felt something twist painfully inside her. "Why? Did you forget?" Mina hesitated again. The nurse stepped in gently. "Honey, you're safe here. You don't have to hide anything." And the truth slowly came out. Mina's father had passed away 2 years earlier. Her mother worked double shifts at a factory, barely making enough to cover rent and bills. Some nights, Mina pretended she wasn't hungry so her mother could eat. Some days, she brought nothing to school simply because there was nothing to bring. She had learned to stay quiet about it, to blend into the background, so no one would ask questions she couldn't answer. Sara felt her throat tighten. Around them, the room seemed to fall silent, even though distant school noises continued. She had seen Mina sit alone at lunch so many times. She had assumed it was by choice. "I'm so sorry," Sara said softly. "You don't have to be," Mina replied. "It's just life." But there was no bitterness in her voice. Only exhaustion. Only acceptance. Sara stood up and wiped her eyes subtly. "Wait here. I'll be right back." Without waiting for a response, she ran out of the clinic. She dug into her bag, grabbed her lunchbox, then rushed to the cafeteria and used all the money she had planned to spend on a new hair clip to buy extra food. Sandwiches, a soup cup, some fruit, and a bottle of juice. When she returned, Mina's eyes widened. "Sara, this is too much." "It's not," Sara insisted, placing the food beside her. "Eat slowly. You need it. And you're not alone. Okay?" The words, ordinary as they sounded, landed like a warm blanket around Mina's heart. No one had said that to her in a long time. While Mina ate, Sara sat beside her, listening. Truly listening. She didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She didn't pretend to understand perfectly. She just listened, and that was exactly what Mina had needed. The nurse eventually called Mina's teacher, who arrived, looking worried. After hearing everything, she promised to speak with the school counselor and arrange support, free lunches, financial aid applications, regular check-ins. Mina tried to refuse, but the teacher placed a hand on her shoulder and said, Let us help. You deserve it. For the first time in years, Mina felt something she had almost forgotten, relief. As the lunch bell rang, Sara stood up. From today, she said with a small smile. You're sitting with me. No arguments. Mina looked at her, eyes glistening. Why are you being so kind? Sara shrugged gently. Because someone should have been kind sooner. In that moment, a silent promise formed between them, a promise that kindness, once given, doesn't just help someone survive. It helps them rise. Years passed, and the quiet, fragile Mina transformed into someone almost unrecognizable. Confidence replaced her fear, purpose replaced her loneliness, and success replaced her struggle. She had graduated with honors, earned a scholarship, and built a life she once believed was impossible. Yet even with everything she had achieved, she never forgot the day her life changed, the day Sara stopped and cared when no one else did. One sunny morning, Mina received an invitation from her old school. They were hosting an annual Inspiration Day, where former students returned to share their journeys. The moment she saw the invitation, her heart tightened, not with fear, but with gratitude. She knew this was her chance to finally tell the story she had kept inside for years. When Mina arrived at the school auditorium, it looked smaller than she remembered, yet full of life. Students chatted, teachers prepared their notes, and the smell of freshly arranged flowers filled the room. But amidst all the familiar faces and warm memories, Mina searched for only one person. Sara. She found her sitting in the front row, now a young woman, flipping through some papers. Her posture was still calm, her smile still gentle. She hadn't changed much except she looked more mature, more composed. Mina's heart swelled. This was the girl who had once given her food, comfort, and dignity. The girl who had changed her path when she didn't even know she needed saving. As Mina walked toward the stage, students whispered to each other. They had heard a successful former student was coming, but they didn't know her story yet. Mina took a deep breath, stepped up to the podium, and looked out at the sea of young faces, faces that reminded her of who she used to be. She began softly. Most of you don't know me. Years ago, I was a student just like you. But I wasn't confident or outgoing. I spent most days hoping nobody would notice how lonely I was. The room quieted. I had a hard life at home, she continued. My father had passed away, and my mother worked night shifts. Some days we barely had enough to eat. I thought I had to carry everything alone. Sara's eyes widened, and Mina saw recognition starting to bloom. Then one day, Mina said, her voice heavier. I collapsed outside that very gate. I didn't know it then, but that moment could have changed my life forever, either for the better or for the worse. A murmur ran through the audience. But someone stopped. Someone cared enough to see me when everyone else walked right past. She didn't know me. She didn't have to help. But she did. Mina paused and looked directly at Sara, who now sat completely still, stunned. That person was Sara, Mina announced. Gasps filled the auditorium. All eyes turned toward her. Sara's face flushed with shock, confusion, and emotion all at once. She slowly shook her head as if she couldn't believe Mina was talking about her. Mina continued. She carried me to the clinic, bought me food, talked to me, listened to me. She told a teacher about me. And because of her, I received support I didn't even know existed. She didn't just help me that day, she saved me. Tears slid down Sara's cheeks silently. Mina stepped away from the podium and walked toward Sara. The entire hall watched as if witnessing a moment carved out of a movie. Mina gently held Sara's hands and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You didn't know it then, but that single act of kindness saved my life. And everything I've achieved since then is because you chose to care." The students watched in awe. Some wiped tears, others nodded with emotion. Teachers stood tall with pride. Mina turned back to the audience. "Let this be a reminder," she said. "Kindness is never small. You may think your actions don't matter, but to someone else your kindness can be the reason they keep going. You might save a life without ever realizing it." A powerful silence filled the room, the kind that stays with people long after the moment ends. When the applause finally erupted, it felt like thunder. Sara hugged Mina tightly, whispering, "I didn't know. I never thought it meant that much." "It meant everything," Mina replied. And in that moment, everyone understood the message of her story. One act of kindness can change a life. And sometimes, it can even save one.